Hi, greetings. It's me, Dr. Paul Gerhardt, and today I want to talk about external analysis. This is the fourth video in an entrepreneurship video series, so if you haven't watched the other videos, I highly suggest that you go back and watch the other ones. But each of these videos can stand upon itself, but it is better if you watch the videos in the order that I've got them listed. So, in this fourth video, I want to talk about things that potential business owners should consider as you're talking about looking at the competition. Essentially, what is happening externally that new business owners or potential new business owners should consider? You know, if you really want to create a business that lasts, you really have to understand who your target customers are for your new business and create a profile. You need to be able to understand your industry. You need to recognize how to categorize your competitors using an external analysis. And you should be able to construct competitive maps to be able to be very, very clear what market you're in. So there's a lot to consider in doing business, and making bad decisions with not enough information could be the difference between whether a business succeeds or a business goes underwater. So hopefully you'll find this video helpful. Let's talk about external analysis. So here are some critical steps for doing an external analysis. One, you have to be very clear and define the industry in which you're going to be competing. Define your customers. Who specifically are they? It's never everybody. Research the industry that you're in. Identify the competitors within the industry. Research those competitors. Draw a competitive map. We'll talk about how to do that. Examine and develop insights about the industry, and then develop an understanding about your competitive advantage. And it's that competitive advantage that really will help you stay competitive, for lack of better words. So, let's talk about defining your industry. You have to be as specific as possible. If you're going to open, say, an ice cream store, you have to ask yourself, in what industry does a new ice cream store compete? Obviously, it's with other ice cream stores, right? Does it include dessert providers, such as bakeries? And does it compete with grocery stores for packaged ice cream? And is it high-end, high milk fat ice cream? So defining an industry should not be taken lightly. I mean, there's very clear questions that you need to ask yourself. So when you're gathering information, there's different areas that you could look at, and it's very important. You can search online, do a general Google search. You can use industry journals. Usually there's people who are advertising in those industry journals, and they're being talked about in those industry journals. And then industry associations have memberships to those, and they provide support for business owners. So when you're gathering information for statistical data, use the NAICS code for your industry. NAICS stands for North American Industry Classification System, and it's generated by the U.S. government as a means to gather, track, and publish data for our specific industries. And so you should be able to look on a national level and also on a local level. So that really is important. So let's talk about defining your industry. You define your industry broadly enough to include all potential competitors. We're in a global marketplace. But don't make it so broad that it's overwhelming. You have to be realistic about it. And more importantly, you must be clear about the practical level of actual competition. If you're running an ice cream store, you're probably not competing with someone in China, right? So what is reasonably geographically is usually the clear definer of who you're competing with. So industry, these are direct competitors selling similar products or services within a specific geographic radius that is consistent with a customer's willingness to travel to purchase those products and services. You know, almost everybody is competing with Amazon.com. You know, so you have to think about what gives you a competitive advantage over Amazon, for instance. So then, of course, you have local people who are doing what you're doing that you have to consider. You have to be very, very clear on who your customers are. You cannot be everything to all people. You have to define a narrow group of individuals that you believe will most likely be your customers. You've got to be diligent and as accurate as possible, and it helps you really be able to focus on its core customer and maintain a strategic distance from your competitors, and it also helps control expenses. You must develop information for an external analysis of your competitors. So you have to identify exactly who your competitors are that you are directly competing with for the same set of ideal customers. You need to research your industry, and in doing so you'll gain valuable insight. It will also make you an expert in your business and enable you to plan your business and create a competitive advantage. It really is important to know your market. For example, when planning a new development like a golf course, knowing your market is crucial. You have to consider what activities that you want to control personally in developing your business. So, defining actual competitors. You start by identifying every potential competitor within a reasonable distance of your location. You first define the radius from which you will draw from, for example, 20-minute drive, in traffic. And next, examine your potential competitors within that particular radius. You have to understand a couple of key terms here. One is fragmented markets, and the other thing is competitive map, and I've used that term already. So fragmented markets are markets in which no competitor has a substantial share of the market, and the means of competition vary widely within the same market space. Competitive map is an analytical tool used to organize information about direct competitors on all points of competition. So, when you are developing a competitive map, you do it for these reasons. One, it makes things less expensive. Two, it allows better positioning of your new business, and it gives insights to help you position yourself with pricing and even facility layout. And you really must visit all potential competitors as a customer. You got to understand what products that they have, how it looks, how it performs, what it does and what it doesn't do. And then you got to develop a list of criteria and record your visit to each of your competitors. So you need to be able to look at things as it relates to number of households it serves, the household income of the people that they serve, the average age of those customers, the number, if you're doing a golf course, the number of driving ranges that they have, customers per weekday, and then customers per hour, their T charges, costs, the average transaction amount, flow, traffic, talk about characteristics about the feel of the clubhouse, for instance, if you're doing a clubhouse, and the variety of your own menu, and what does the course look like and feel like. So these are just some examples of things that you can do for a competitive map. So you have to figure out what the criteria is for your particular business. Some other things that you need to consider in doing an external analysis are external issues. What are the substitutes for it? If you have a coffee shop, is there a tea shop next door? Elasticity of demand. If you have a golf course, and if you're in like Washington State, do fewer people golf in the winter? Ease of entry and exit. Benchmarking and industry trends. So sometimes products are popular for a while and then they drop off. How do you know you've got a product or service that people are going to want? So substitutes are always something to consider, and substitutes are products that perform a similar function or achieve the same results but are not a precise imitation. You got to keep in mind potential substitutes at all time as a business owner. You need to recognize that at some price a trade-off customers will switch. And then substitutes from a ceiling on a price that you can charge for your product or service. So you have to be aware of how price matters and can affect your revenues. So elasticity of demand is all about consumers responding to price changes. For example, as the price of luxury items increase, demand usually declines as these goods are not essential and purchases can be delayed. Conversely, items such as gas for your car typically are relative to inelasticity of demand, as you'll not stop using it as the price increases. And we've probably all felt the price gouging of gas companies, right? You have to consider an exit barrier, and this is the ease of entering and exiting a business investment. And it's really important to consider, a barrier such as investment capital and assets that keep a firm from leaving an industry always must be considered. So choosing a clothing store as a high exit barrier, sharp discounts are in order. We've all seen this happen. Closing a golf course has a low exit barrier. The land can be converted to housing. The ability to exit a business easily tends to limit the intensity of competition, and it also reduces the threat of opposed new entry. Benchmarking is something to consider too, and benchmarking is working with and learning from a company outside of your industry that has a particular skill that is potentially critical to your operation. It could strengthen your areas of competitive advantage, and you should consider benchmarking as in business so that it helps you understand your competition in your industry. And most companies will share knowledge with you as long as you're not a competitor. Industry trends. Industry trends shape long-term prospects of the industry, and the United States is moving to a self-service economy. This is a trend, and if you can take advantage of that, your business may succeed. So in order to make it healthy, you have to very often mid-price restaurants have been increasing dramatically, and restaurants that enter in an emerging market may be able to create a niche and gain a competitive market. So can't be all things to all people, but being very, very clear on who you are is important. And that's what competitive advantage is. You really have to clearly define it for you. It's made up of those things that a business does better than anyone else in the industry. It's about understanding your competitive advantage, and it's about really knowing that this is the reason why customers will come to your business instead of going to your competitors. So some sources of competitive advantage can be the activity of the firm or services that you provide. It could be structural, such as location, and your customers have reasons to choose you over your competitors, and you really must know what those reasons are to maintain your competitive advantages are. And sometimes you can ask your customers, or sometimes it just kind of makes common sense. We talked about location is really important in many businesses. Some competitive factors always need to be considered, and you need to be able to define things that are standards practices in your industry, and everybody must be able to do those things well. In some businesses, you could look at, let's take a restaurant, a storefront, tables, chairs, floor covering, lights, cash registers. The things that can make you unique in your business. As far as a storefront, it could be a small, intimate facility. Your tables could be maybe some kind of unique texture to the tables. Your chairs could be roller or cushioned chairs, special tiling on the floors, mood lighting. As far as cash register, maybe people want to pay at the table. So these kinds of things could give you a competitive advantage because they're kind of unique. Things that make your company unique give you a competitive advantage if it's desirable to your specific target audience. So Anyway, everything is about value, and really being very, very clear that in order to have a competitive advantage, you really must make sure that your products and services are rare, are durable, and relatively not substitutable, easily substitutable, and seen as valuable, of value to other people. And these are the things that you really must consider when you're doing an external analysis. I know I've covered a lot of information in the last 15 minutes. I highly suggest you watch the video sometime again and then put together your competitive advantage plan as you analyze who your competition is. And hopefully this video helps. And I hope that you have a great day, because only you get to choose how you feel about it. I'm Dr. Paul Gerhardt.